We'll discuss one theory on how humans made the jump from small-scale tribal systems to large-scale systems of transactions with strangers, basing this on the work of Joe Henrich. In the video that you'll watch after this, you'll see a presentation by Joe Henrich on his book, The Secret of Our Success. And in this book, he argues that information that we learn from our culture enables us to survive and enabled the evolution of humankind. Culture contains all the information we process. Specifically, it contains a system of norms, including our fairness norms and punishment norms, which mold what we know as morality and morally relevant behavior. Cultures unfold differently and have for a long time been different all around the world, of course. Henrich proposes that humans have not only existed in environments, they've been subject to the influences of unique environments which changed humans' physiology and psychology in tractable ways. In his paper, Markets, Religion, Community Size, and the Evolution of Fairness and Punishment, Henrich's theory about norms and institutions proposes that to sustain beneficial exchanges in contexts where kin reciprocity is insufficient, and that would be in anonymous contexts over vast distances, whenever it's impossible to know the identity of the person in the transaction. In these cases, norms for fairness and market exchange and institutions like world religions let strangers participate in systems as though they were trustworthy cooperators. It's extremely difficult to find evidence for evolutionary theories. So how did they go about it? For their method, they used 3 experiments to measure individuals' propensities for fairness and their willingness to punish unfairness across 15 populations around the world. And these populations varied in their degree of market integration and their participation in world religions. What is market integration? Degree of market integration was the extent to which the population acquired their total household calories by purchasing them in the market, rather than from subsistence agriculture or from foraging. World religion was assessed by asking participants what religion they practiced and coding these as a binary variable, actually, with 1 for Islam or Christianity and 0 for the practice of a tribal religion or no religion. In the article, you can see there's a list of the 15 populations and the locations used in the study. These locations varied as far as the type of environment and economic base. The residence type of the population also varied. And they included, for example, sedentary wage workers from Missouri and the Hadza tribe in Tanzania who live in savanna woodlands and forage for subsistence, and the semi-sedentary Dolgan people in Siberia who live in the tundra and hunt, fish, and work for wages. The 3 columns revealed on the right show how the populations varied in their degree of market integration, the percent of their calories that they're getting from purchasing food at a market. And they also varied in their participation in world religions, as well as community size in the last column. For example, regarding market integration, the sedentary wage workers from Missouri, they have a market integration score of 100. 100% of their food is purchased. The Hadza tribe, by contrast, does not have market integration, so they have none of their food is purchased, so the score is 0. The semi-sedentary Dolgan people have a market integration score of 63, indicating that 63% of their calories come from purchased food. So with all these different populations, what did they do? The method involved giving them experiments using economic games or fairness games. The three games that they used were the dictator game, the ultimatum game, and the third-party punishment game, each of which we'll review next. Let's go over the dictator game. This is a one-shot interaction, and this means that players don't interact repeatedly, just one time. There are two players, two anonymous players. They don't know each other's identities. We'll call them player A and player B. Player A, who we'll call the dictator, must decide how to split a sum of money, say $10. Player B, on the other hand, can't do anything, is not making decisions. So A can pick any amount to give to player B, and A's behavior is taken as a measure of their conception of fairness. And across a sample of people in a population, the average dictator game offer is taken as a measure of a fairness norm in a population. The ultimatum game is slightly different. There are still two anonymous players, A and B, and A must still decide how to split a sum of money, say $10. But this time, player B can decide to accept or reject the offer. And so player B commits to accepting or rejecting each possible offer before they begin, from say $1 to $10. In the game, A makes an offer. If it's one of the offers that B committed to accepting, they split the sum accordingly and get that amount, each of them. But if it was an amount that player B had rejected, both of them get nothing. The ultimatum game is taken as a measure of what player B, that player who's figuring out whether to accept or reject different offers and what's the lowest they'll go, it's taken as a measure of player B's expectations about fairness norms. When we measure results in the ultimatum game across a population, this lets us answer the question, what does the population consider normal? What is fair in this population? Finally, the third-party punishment game, TPG, it measures the willingness to punish selfishness in a population. And it also measures fair behavior by an allocator under the threat of punishment. In the third-party punishment game, player A must decide how to split a sum of money again. Let's say it's $100 this time with player B. But what's different is there's also a player C now. And player C has their own money, about half of what player A has, $50. Player C can punish player A for selfishness, but it's costly. 20% of their allotment is required to punish player A. So player A is deciding how to split the money, and player C is deciding whether to punish player A or not if they are selfish. Let's look at an example. Player A gives, say, $10 out of their $100 to player B. This would be typically considered selfish. Player C can punish player A by paying up 20% of their $50. And as a result, player A's punishment is that they'll lose triple the amount that they had given to player B. So the result of this particular game is that player A will end up with $60 because out of the 100, they gave player A $10 and then got a punishment of $30 from player C. In this game, player B would get $10 from player A, and player C would be left with $40 because they gave up 20% of their allotment of $50 to punish player A. So this is an important measure, the third-party punishment game, of participants' willingness to engage in costly punishment for altruistic reasons. It also allows us to assess how people in a particular population behave under the threat of punishment and their social motivations. So they're giving these games to people in all these different populations, these 15 populations. What is their key prediction? The authors predict that if markets and world religion are linked to the norms that sustain exchange in large-scale societies, then they should see measures of fairness and anonymous interactions in those societies to positively co-vary with measures of involvement in these two institutions, markets and world religions. So they're expecting a positive relationship between offers and fairness games and participation in markets and world religions.